I never thought my life would take such a drastic turn in a matter of days. I, Emily, a 35-year-old woman, happily married, or so I thought, to Mark for a decade, lived in a bubble of apparent perfection. We had a beautiful house in the suburbs, successful careers, and an enviable social circle. My younger sister Jessica was my best friend and confidant. We had been inseparable since childhood, and now, at 30, we were still very close. Or at least that's what I thought. It all started on a Sunday afternoon like any other. Mark had gone out to play golf with his friends, as he usually did every weekend. I was at home, enjoying a moment of tranquility, when I decided to tidy up a bit. As I picked up dirty laundry from the bedroom, Mark's phone fell out of his pocket. The screen lit up with a message notification. I'm not a naturally curious person, and I've always respected my husband's privacy. But something at that moment compelled me to look. Maybe it was the way the name Jay appeared on the screen, or maybe it was a hunch. Whatever it was, I unlocked the phone. I knew his password. He had never hidden it, and opened the conversation. What I saw left me breathless. Messages loaded with intimacy, suggestive photos, plans for clandestine meetings. My heart raced as my eyes scanned the screen, unable to believe what I was seeing. Mark, was having an affair. But the worst was yet to come. As I read more messages, I began to notice familiar details, references to places I knew, to moments that seemed strangely close to home. And then, like lightning, the truth hit me. The J was none other than Jessica, my sister, my best friend. The world stopped around me. I felt nauseous, my vision blurred, and I had to sit on the bed to avoid falling. How was this possible? How could the two people I trusted most in the world do this to me? I spent the next few hours in a state of shock, unable to process the information. When Mark returned, I acted normally, hiding my pain and confusion behind a forced smile. I needed time to think, to decide how to face this betrayal. The following days were torture. I watched Mark with new eyes, looking for signs, trying to understand how he had been capable of deceiving me in this way. Every gesture, every word, every look. Everything seemed to have a double meaning now. I decided not to confront them immediately. I needed proof. I needed to understand the magnitude of their betrayal. So I became a spy in my own life. I started paying attention to every detail, every unexplained absence, every suspicious call. A week after my discovery, Mark informed me that he had a 3-day business trip. My instinct told me it was a lie, so I decided to follow him. I saw him head to the airport, check in his luggage, and pass through security. For a moment, I thought maybe I had been wrong, that it had all been a product of my imagination. But something prompted me to wait. 2 hours later, I saw Jessica enter the airport. She was carrying a small suitcase and seemed nervous, constantly looking around. I followed her at a distance and saw her meet Mark in a secluded cafe. They kissed passionately, oblivious to the world around them, oblivious to the pain they were causing me. I followed them throughout their business trip. They stayed at a luxurious hotel on the coast, spent their days on the beach, dined at romantic restaurants. Every moment I witnessed was like a stab in my heart. When they returned 3 days later, I decided it was time to confront them. But first, I needed to understand why. What had I done wrong? At what point had my marriage crumbled without me noticing? I reviewed old photos, reread past conversations, looking for clues I might have overlooked. And then, in a forgotten box in the attic, I found something that would change everything: Jessica's diary from when we were teenagers. With trembling hands, I began to read. The pages were full of confessions from a 15-year-old Jessica, hopelessly in love with Mark, who was then my high school boyfriend. I read about her pain, her envy, her desire to be me. It was heartbreaking to see how my little sister had suffered in silence for so many years. But that didn't justify her betrayal, nor Mark's. With this new information, I decided to confront them once and for all. I organized a dinner at home, inviting Jessica under the pretext of a family gathering. The tension was palpable from the moment they arrived. Jessica avoided my gaze, while Mark seemed uncomfortable and distant. We dined in silence, interrupted only by forced conversations about the weather and work. Finally, when dessert arrived, I decided it was time. With a trembling but firm voice, I said, "I know about the two of you." The silence that followed was deafening. I saw the color drain from their faces, how they exchanged panicked looks. Mark was the first to speak, trying to deny everything. But I interrupted him by showing them the photos I had taken during their getaway. Jessica burst into tears, while Mark was left speechless, unable to find words to justify their actions. I told them everything. How I had discovered the messages, how I had followed them, how I had found the diary. Why was all I could ask in the end. Through tears, Jessica began to speak. She told me about her teenage crush, about how she had never been able to get over Mark. She talked about years of therapy, failed attempts at relationships, always comparing other men to the one she considered her true love. Mark, for his part, confessed that he had always felt a special connection with Jessica, but that he loved me and had never wanted to hurt me. He spoke of a night of drinking 6 months ago, of how one thing led to another, of how they couldn't stop once they crossed that line. I listened to their explanations in silence, feeling how each word tore my heart a little more. When they finished, I stood up from the table and asked them to leave. I needed time to process everything, to decide what to do with my life from that moment on. The following days were a whirlwind of emotions. I went from anger to sadness, from denial to acceptance. I received countless messages and calls from both of them, begging for forgiveness, asking for a chance to explain themselves better. I ignored them all. I immersed myself in work, spent hours at the gym. Anything to keep my mind occupied and not think about the betrayal. My friends and colleagues noticed the change in me, but respected my privacy when I told them I needed space. It was during one of my long night walks when I had an epiphany. I realized that, despite the pain and betrayal, a part of me still loved Mark and Jessica. They were such an integral part of my life that I couldn't imagine myself without them. But I also understood that things could never go back to the way they were before. Trust, once broken, is difficult to repair, and the pain they had caused me wouldn't disappear overnight. After weeks of reflection, I decided it was time to talk to them again. I arranged to meet them in a neutral park, a public place where I could maintain calm and composure. I arrived early and saw them approach together, with expressions of anxiety and hope on their faces. I sat on a bench and waited for them to come closer. "Thank you for coming," I began. "I've thought a lot about everything that's happened and what I want to do from now on." I explained to them that, although a part of me wanted to forgive them and move on, another part knew that things would never be the same again. I told them about the pain they had caused me, the shattered trust, the broken dreams. "I can't continue with this marriage, Mark," I finally said, "and Jessica, I need time and space away from you. Maybe someday we can rebuild our relationship as sisters, but for now, I need to heal." I saw tears in their eyes, but I also saw relief. I think deep down, they knew this was the inevitable outcome of their actions. "I hope you'll be happy together," I added, surprising myself with the sincerity of my words. "But I need you to understand that I can't be part of your lives for now." I stood up from the bench, ready to leave, when Jessica stopped me. "Emily," she said with a trembling voice, "I know I have no right to ask you anything, but do you think you'll ever be able to forgive us?" I looked into her eyes, those eyes so similar to mine, and saw genuine remorse in them. "I don't know, Jessica. Time will tell, but for now, I need to focus on myself." With those words, I turned around and walked away, feeling as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I knew the path to healing would be long and difficult, but for the first time in weeks, I felt hope. The following months were a period of self-discovery and personal growth. I moved to a new apartment, enrolled in yoga and meditation classes, and even started writing a journal, something I hadn't done since adolescence. Little by little, I rebuilt my life. I made new friends, focused on my career, and most importantly, learned to be okay with myself. Mark and Jessica's betrayal, although painful, had taught me valuable lessons about self-love and independence. A year after that day in the park, I received an unexpected invitation. It was from Mark and Jessica. They were getting married and wanted me to attend the wedding. My first impulse was to reject the invitation immediately. How could they think I would want to be part of that? But then, after reflecting, I realized that maybe this was exactly what I needed to close that chapter of my life. I decided to attend, not for them, but for me. I wanted to prove to myself that I had overcome the pain, that I was strong enough to face my past and come out victorious. The wedding day arrived faster than I expected. I dressed carefully, choosing an elegant blue dress that made me feel confident and beautiful. When I arrived at the church, I felt all eyes on me. I could imagine the whispers, the speculations about why I was there. I sat in the last row, silently observing as the ceremony unfolded. Watching Mark and Jessica exchange vows was surreal. A part of me expected to feel pain or resentment. But to my surprise, the only thing I felt was a strange sense of closure. During the reception, many guests approached to talk to me, some uncomfortable, others curious. I answered their questions with a serene smile, surprising myself with my own calmness. Finally, Mark and Jessica approached. There was a moment of tension when we looked into each other's eyes. Years of shared history, passing between us in seconds. "Thank you for coming, Emily," Mark said softly. Jessica, with tears in her eyes, added, "It means a lot to us that you're here." I looked at both of them, and, for the first time in a long time, I felt I could speak to them without pain clouding my thoughts. "I wish you the best," I said sincerely. "Really, a lot has happened between us, but today is a new beginning for all of us." I saw the relief on their faces, the gratitude in their eyes. We hugged. Briefly, a gesture that symbolized not only forgiveness but also release. As I watched them walk away to greet other guests, I felt a sense of peace that I hadn't experienced in a long time. I realized that by forgiving them, I was forgiving myself for not seeing the signs, for being so blind to what was happening around me. That night, as I danced alone on the dance floor, surrounded by happy couples and laughter, I felt truly free. I had faced my fears. I had looked straight at the past and had come out stronger. When the party was coming to an end, I approached Mark and Jessica one last time. I handed them an envelope. "It's my wedding gift," I explained. "Open it when you're alone." Inside the envelope was a letter. In it, I told them about my healing journey, about how I had learned to forgive and love myself. I wished them happiness and asked them to value what they had, not to take their love or their relationship for granted. I also told them that, although I wished them the best, I needed to maintain my distance. Not out of spite or resentment, but because it was best for my own growth and well-being. As I walked away from the reception, I felt as if I was closing a chapter of my life and opening a completely new one. The future, which once seemed uncertain and terrifying, now stretched out before me full of possibilities. In the years that followed, my life took directions I never would have imagined. I focused on my career and achieved a promotion I had always wanted. I started traveling more, exploring places I had always wanted to visit, but for one reason or another, never had the opportunity. During one of these trips, in a small cafe in New York, I met Ryan. He was a writer who was working on his new novel. We started talking and the connection was instant. We spent hours discussing books, travels, and our life experiences. At first, I resisted the idea of starting a new relationship. The memory of my failed marriage and the betrayal still weighed on my mind. But Ryan was patient and understanding. He didn't pressure me, but gave me the space I needed to heal. Completely. Little by little, I opened myself to the possibility of love again. Ryan and I began a long-distance relationship, seeing each other when we could, and having long video call conversations. When we couldn't, it was different from any relationship I had had before. There was a maturity, a mutual understanding that only comes with experience and personal growth. Meanwhile, my relationship with Jessica began to heal slowly. We started with small gestures: a text message on my birthday, a call at Christmas. Over time, these interactions became more frequent and less uncomfortable. One day, almost 3 years after her wedding, Jessica called me with news. She was pregnant. For a moment, I felt a twinge of pain, but it was quickly replaced by genuine joy. "For my sister, I'd like you to be the godmother," Jessica told me with a trembling voice. That request took me by surprise. It was a gesture of reconciliation. An olive branch extended across the chasm that had separated us. After thinking about it for a few days, I accepted. The day of the nets, the baby shower was emotional. Seeing Jessica radiant in her pregnancy, Mark attentive and caring, made me realize how much things had changed. I no longer felt pain seeing them together. Instead, I felt a strange sense of closure, as if the last chapter of our complicated history was finally being written. It was during that party that Ryan surprised me by showing up without warning. Seeing him there, interacting with my family and friends, made me realize how much I loved him and how much my heart had healed. That night, as Ryan and I walked back home, he asked me a question that would change my life once again. "Emily," he said, stopping under the light of a street lamp, "these last few years have been the happiest of my life. I can't imagine a future without you. Will you marry me?" My heart skipped a beat. For a moment, all my past fears and doubts resurfaced. But looking into Ryan's eyes, I saw something I had never seen before: unconditional love, a promise of companionship and mutual respect. "Yes," I answered with tears in my eyes. "Yes, I'll marry you." Our wedding was an intimate celebration, very different from my first wedding to Mark. We chose a small villa on the coast of California, surrounded only by our closest friends and family. To my surprise, seeing Mark and Jessica among the guests didn't cause me any discomfort. On the contrary, I felt a deep gratitude. Without knowing it, their betrayal had led me on a path of self-discovery and growth that had brought me to this moment of pure happiness. During the reception, Jessica approached me with her baby in her arms. "I'm so happy for you, Emily," she said, with tears in her eyes. "You deserve all the happiness in the world." I hugged her, feeling as if years of tension and pain finally dissipated. "Thank you, Jessica," I replied. "I think we all deserve to be happy." That night, as I danced with Ryan under the stars, I reflected on the incredible journey my life had been in recent years. I had gone through the deepest pain, had faced my worst fears, and had emerged stronger and wiser. I realized that Mark and Jessica's betrayal, although painful at the time, had been the catalyst for my transformation. It had forced me to confront my own insecurities, to learn to love myself, and to open my heart to new possibilities. As Ryan looked at me with love, I felt a deep peace. I knew that whatever happened, I had the strength to face it. I had learned that true love begins with oneself, and that forgiveness, although difficult, is the path to true freedom. That night, under the starry sky of California, surrounded by love and new beginnings, I felt truly complete. My story hadn't ended with a betrayal, but had evolved into something beautiful and meaningful. And as I looked towards the future, full of hope and love, I knew that the best was yet to come, because every ending is just the beginning of something new. And every challenge is an opportunity to grow and love more deeply. In the years that followed, Ryan and I built a life together full of love, respect, and adventures. We had 2 children, Ethan and Sophia, who filled our days with joy and new challenges. My relationship with Jessica continued to improve over time. Our children became friends, and little by little, we regained that complicity we had shared as children. Mark and I also managed to establish a cordial relationship, based on mutual respect and affection for our shared nieces and nephews. There were difficult moments, of course, days when old memories threatened to overwhelm me. Nights when I woke up with my heart racing, reliving the pain of the betrayal. But Ryan was always there, holding my hand, reminding me how strong I was, how far I had come. As the years passed, I realized that life isn't a straight line of happiness or sadness. It's a series of ups and downs, of lessons and growth. The betrayal that I once thought would destroy me had become the turning point that led me to a fuller, more authentic life. Looking back, I see that every step of my journey was necessary. Pain taught me compassion. Betrayal taught me forgiveness. And loss taught me to value what I have. Every experience, good or bad, molded me into the person I am today. And so, as I write these words in my journal on my 50th birthday, I feel grateful. Grateful for the lessons, for the growth, for the love I've found, and for the love I've learned to give myself. Life can surprise us in ways we never expect. It can break us down and rebuild us. But in the end, it's we who choose how to respond to those surprises, how to heal from those wounds, and how to love after the pain. My story isn't one of a victim, but of a survivor. It's not a story of betrayal, but of redemption, and above all, it's a story of love. Self-love, family love, and the kind of love that emerges when you least expect it. Just when you think your heart can't love anymore. As I close my journal and look out the window, I see Ryan playing in the garden with our children and our nieces and nephews. I see Jessica laughing with her husband, our parents sitting on the porch, watching the family they've created. And I smile, because I know this is my life now. Imperfect, complicated, but beautiful in its own way. And I wouldn't change it for anything in the world, because in the end, I learned that true love isn't something we find in another person. It's something we cultivate within ourselves, something we share with the world, something that allows us to forgive, heal, and begin again. And that, dear diary, is the most valuable lesson of all.